Hey, looks like you're feeling yourself, and that's okay. If you want to masturbate while you watch my videos, then I won't judge, but we should probably talk about Leroy nerfs because, much like you are about to do, they came. Now, but all the changes I think are significant from the patch notes up on the screen, and we're going to talk about them. But before we get to that, I want to talk a bit about the circumstances of this patch because it is a bit of a strange situation. I want to talk about what I think is going to happen next. Now, something a lot of people noticed when these patch notes were revealed is that they seem to have been finalized around the time Leroy was first implemented into the game, and that unfortunately proves this theory I had that this character was released broken on purpose with the intention of nerfing him down the line, because there's no other reason to have a set of nerfs ready when you first implement a character. So that does seem to be the marketing move that they made, probably to boost hype and sales around the holidays, and it's extremely unfortunate. But then again, I think they've faced so much backlash over this that it's something they are very unlikely to try again in the future, and that's a very good thing. And in that specific sense, I'm kind of happy about what happened at EVO Japan this year. The tournament itself wasn't very interesting to watch, but it placed so much focus on this issue that it became sort of undeniable. It's an objective truth right now that this character was overpowered, and it probably sped up this process of getting him balanced, Now, there was another wave of backlash when the notes were revealed because most players felt that they were not enough to balance the character, and I agree with that. If these changes on the screen is everything, then this character is still by far the best character in the game and very unreasonably balanced. But then again, Namco have said that these are the first changes and that there is more on the way. Depending on how you interpret that, that can mean that there's another nerf coming to Leroy quite soon, or that we're going to have to wait until the release of Fuck'em Rom later this spring for the full set of changes. I don't think we're going to have to wait until the release of Fuck'em Rom. That's my personal interpretation of this. I think that these are the changes that they had ready since last year, so they could put them in right away, and now they are working on more stuff. I don't think they want to delay it until the release of Fuck'em Rom because they realize now how much the character is currently damaging the game. But I also want to say that I watched that video. I mean, I was extremely vocal in my criticism of the balance design of Leroy, but I watched that Developer Diaries video where they talked about the development of Fuck'em Rom and Leroy. I did a translation of it on my channel that you can watch, but they've also put up a version with English subtitles now that I think you should probably watch instead, so that you don't have to have me, start and stop everything. But something I felt strongly when I watched that video was that there are definitely still people at Namco who, artists who care deeply about making great things and providing a good product for their consumers. And while I do think they made a very big mistake with the release of Leroy and went off track, I feel like we're sort of back on track now and heading in the right direction. And that's why I want to say that I hope we can re-establish amicable communications between us and the player community and the people who make the game, because as long as we can send a very clear message when we think they are doing something very wrong and have them listen, then there's probably no need for us to think of each other as enemies, because I don't think that benefits either party in the long run. And that's my little hippie message for this video. But I just wanted to have that said, because the second wave of backlash when these nerfs weren't big enough seemed a little bit excessive in my opinion. But then again, making jokes about this stuff and creating memes has been pretty much the most fun part of the whole Leroy journey so far, and what's made it all bearable in my opinion. So I get it, but I think that there are going to be more nerfs really quite soon. That's at least my sort of optimistic opinion. But let's talk about the changes that are in the game already. Some of them are significant enough that it's at least going to be easier to deal with this character going forward. So the first one, if we go to the top here, is Hermit Ford 4, and that's your orbital from Hermit. So it's not your normal orbital, it's the one from the stands that you don't see that often, but it got a damage nerf of 4 points. I don't think that's very significant. The one context where I can see it really matter is the wall combo, the very high damage wall combo that you can do when you use this orbital to cause a bounce, and then you can get guaranteed stuff on the ground. But that combo is a little bit finicky, and I don't think that many people are actually implementing it at the moment, so I don't think this change is too big. It's a slight nerf to that one move. Next, down forward 1 has gone from 14 to 12 damage. Now, the problem with Leroy's down forward 1 is not its damage, it's the frame data. This down forward 1 is -1 on block, and I just tested it, and it's still -1 on block, and that's very good. But it's especially good when you have it with a character who has good counter hits, and we saw that with Katarina. She had a -1 down forward 1 in conjunction with her very powerful for example, standing 4 counter hits, you know, the standing 4 string, and the standing 4 string has been nerfed multiple times, and her down forward one has been nerfed because that was probably a little bit too powerful, but Leroy still has it, and he also still has, excuse me, pretty much the best counter hit package of any character in the game. So I think that they should go back to this move and change the frame data, and if the frame data becomes more reasonable, the move should probably be at least -3 or more, then I would be fine with it doing 14 damage instead of 12. Next is the move that they've changed the most. It's the down to 4, and this is the the low punch into a kick that you see him use the delayed version as a combo ender for really high combo damage, and that has taken a hit in the sense that this now does lower damage. It's gone from 17 to 11, so it's a pretty significant damage nerf. And so you're not incentivized to use that as your combo ender as much. And then the next change is that it's gone from -11 on block to -13. That's really quite big. You can actually block this string on reaction if you hold down back. And if Leroy is facing one of those characters with a 13 frame or faster while standing launcher, you know, like Kazuya or maybe some of the 2D characters, then he has to be very careful. I think this is an extremely reasonable change because -11 was too small for how good this low actually was. 13, most characters can do something pretty powerful. Not everybody has something great, and definitely not everybody has a launcher, but most characters have something more powerful than just a while standing 4, so I think it's a good change. Next, down forward 2-4, it was ±0 on hit, and now it's going to be -2, and I think that's good. An abusive thing that people did online was this string into a counter hit move, from while standing, and that's going to be more difficult to set up. That wasn't super powerful if you're a good player and he did that while standing counter hit move that he has. That's -13 on block and you can deal with that, so I don't think this is huge. But then again, ±0 for that low was unreasonable. A lot of good low pokes in the game actually give you disadvantage on hit. It's much more common than you would suppose because they're not supposed to be used for setting stuff up and getting momentum. They're supposed to be sort of for chip damage, and that is why the most problematic move that Leroy has, in my opinion, it's another move that we're going to get to later, because at the end of all of this I'm going to talk about the changes I still think are needed very much, the moves I still think need to be looked at. Next, down back 1-3 has a damage nerf of 3 points from 20 to 17, and this is one of your combo fillers with Leroy. It's used in pretty much all his combos. It's a very high damage move. So this is a small nerf to his overall combo damage. I've tested the bog standard Leroy combo that you see, so I did it with orbital. So orbital into this move, into down 3-2, into hermit 2-1, and then run up bicycle kicks for the ender, and that still gives you 70, which I think is very high for orbital still. So hey, he still has good combo damage, but it's been brought down a little bit because of the nerf to this one filler string that you find in a lot of his combos. Then again, Leroy has quite flexible combos, and I see people try all kinds of different things, so maybe there is still a way of leaving the string out and getting the really high damage. And then we have down back 1+2, that's gone from -9, so safe, to -10. This string, the fact that it was safe was kind of crazy in my opinion. You know, it's mid and high powered, not natural of course, but still, so that should definitely be at least -10. I could see this be reasonable at -12 even, or 13 possibly. So yeah, it shouldn't be safe, but again, it's not a super powerful move that Leroy's tend to abuse a whole lot, so I don't really get it, but yeah, it definitely shouldn't be safe. Back 3 has had a damage nerf of 2 points. Back 3 is that kick that launches on the first hit and spin, so you have to go up and improvise, a post spin combo right away, and you can still get I did a couple of simple improvised combos and got between 55 and 60, so it's still quite good, and I still think that this move is very good, but again, it's not one of those abusive moves that really had to be looked at. It was probably the back 4 they had to look at over the back 3. And next, this is the most significant change in this set of nerfs by far, in my opinion. And when I saw this, I was happy, because if I had to make a top list of nerfs I wanted to Leroy, this would be in the top 5 easy. And it's his orbital being brought from -3 on block to -8. Now, orbitals tend to be in that region around -8, but there's no orbital ever in the game. I shouldn't say ever, because I haven't gone and looked at frame data from very, much older games, but there's no other orbital in the game right now that's anywhere near as good as -3 on block. So very strange. And when I saw this -3 number, it was one of those moments where I became convinced that this character was broken on purpose, because that's not a thing that you do on accident. And even if you do it on accident, if it was -6 or 7, I would be like, okay, maybe, but -3, is crazy. So this should definitely be at least -8, and I'm very happy that that happened. So again, I have this optimistic feeling that even though the nerfs are not enough, we are heading in the right direction. Next, this is interesting. The up 4 3 +4 1 +2 are the bicycle kicks that you see Leroy use for his combo ender a lot. Now, when I saw this, I thought that the change was going to be that you can no longer get it guaranteed after a 4-4-3, because I don't think you should get this guaranteed after a 4-4-3. I've tested it, and you still do. This move is still great for a combo ender and has its massive range and damage, so it's still your go-to. The change, as far as I can tell, and I might be wrong here because I don't play Leroy, because I don't want to play Leroy, but the way it seems to have changed, as far as I can tell, is instead of sending the opponent very far away, it seems to sort of diagonally spike them downwards towards the ground. So this is probably intended to be a nerf to the wall carry potential of this string. That's the way I interpret it, so you don't have quite as insane wall carry for this ender, and maybe you have to sacrifice some damage now if you want a really high nice wall splat, and then you have to choose your ender depending on what you're trying to do, which is a decent change. But I would prefer that this move was changed in a way where you don't really get it guaranteed off of a bunch of stuff. And if I'm wrong about that stuff with it actually sending them in a different trajectory now, then let me know. But that is what I picked up when I used it. And next, 4-4-2-2, that's the gap closing big launcher, and that has a damage nerf of 5 points. Again, it's nice that they've nerfed a powerful move, but damage isn't really the point. When a move is too powerful, you're usually dealing with properties and not damage. Sometimes it's damage, but in the case of this move, one of the issues with it is that it closes the gap so quickly, and then it can be quite difficult to punish. It is minus enough that you can't punish it, but a lot of the punishes I try and do want to just whiff, and then it's such a good mix up with the 4-4-3 when you close the gap, because that's a high and you try and duck, then you eat this instead. So the damage nerf, yeah, makes the combo damage slightly more reasonable. It's still very high, but then again, this is another move where you have to look at other properties apart from the damage. And then finally, the cane has gone from +8 on block all the way down to -7. This move probably shouldn't have been plus in the first place, because he has a rage drive. Why should he get to have 2 great rage drives is kind of the feeling I had. And the move's still cool. I like this idea, and I don't think this is a huge significant change either. So before we wrap this up, what do they still have to look at? A move that many people are talking about is down 1+2. Down 1+2 is an extremely powerful button. Counter hit move, surprisingly good range, and has almost ghost range. It sets up itself. It's difficult to deal with defensively. It's definitely something that they do have to look at, so that's on my list. But the top move, the one I mentioned briefly earlier that I think is the most problematic thing about this entire design, is down 3-2. Down 3-2 is essentially an unseeable low poke. It impacts at 16 frames, which is extremely fast, and it gives you 24 damage. For reference, most low pokes in that category will do around 14 or around there. So this move essentially does 10 more damage than it should, and it transitions into a mix-up stance with 8 frames of advantage, which is insane. You don't get to go into mix-ups with advantage off of an unseeable low like that. It doesn't really happen in Tekken, and it's insane that he still has that. And there are a couple of other moves that I think are very weird. The up 4-2, the fact that you have plus frames on a move that has wall bounce properties and closes the gap. So those are just a couple of examples, and I'm sure you have a couple of favorites as well. But like many people have said, there is still a lot of work to do. I think his counter hit game is still too powerful. I think the down 3-2 is a huge problem. But we're heading in the right direction. I'm at least optimistic about the future. But yeah, let me know how you guys feel about this whole situation, what other changes you want to see in the next set of nerfs. But for now, thank you for watching this, and I'll see you guys again very soon.